Hello and welcome to Addiction Recovery Revolution. I'm your host, Debbie Nelson, and I'm really excited to introduce Garden Gate Counseling, Christina Velsalek. Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me on your program because I think it's so exciting to get this new information out to everybody.
Well, I think part of it I have to introduce, I think of Christina as being this brilliant individual who's like forging the way and has created this wonderful academy for people to learn what brain health is. I've actually been studying under her, and there comes a point where you feel like almost you're in a garden, in a fire hose trying to learn, because there's so much information that's directly correlated with brain health, and that was what started your mission to create the Academy and the Alliance that we're both a part of, which is the Alliance for Addiction Solutions.
Absolutely, and I'll explain more about those in a minute. But Debbie, I remember the first time that I ever walked into a vitamin store looking for something and how overwhelmed I was by the choice and the variety, and I just wanted to run out screaming.
Right.
And then I got the opportunity to work in a vitamin store for several years. And now I'm sort of considered the amino acid and vitamin guru. So I'm very comfortable in a vitamin store, but I very much understand the learning curve. And this is why I created the Academy for Addiction and Mental Health Nutrition, because I want to help people like you, as well as psychiatrists, doctors, addiction counselors, mental health professionals, massage therapists, anybody who works with people who have mental health or addiction issues. I want to teach all of you that this isn't this big, scary, intimidating thing, but that you really can learn how to use simple nutrients, even the simplest fish oil, to improve brain health, mood, and lower cravings for addictive substances.
And I think that's where the biggest disconnect that our society has as a whole, because, if you were to talk about someone has a heart attack, everyone rushes out and they know all these nutrients and all these things they should be doing and what they should be eating and what they shouldn't be eating. But if someone has a mental breakdown, for instance, or they have ADD, or they have depression or anxiety, or they have addiction issues that have also correlated and are related to all of those things, because let's face it, most addiction oftentimes is fueled where people try to self-medicate.
Well, absolutely. And then it's off and running. Just before this interview, I met on the phone with a woman who drinks maybe half a bottle of vodka a day and doesn't eat anything. She's drinking to stay alive. And we're doing a week before we move into her detox process where she's going to keep drinking, but now she's going to start taking supplements. And her husband's homework is to make her really good chicken soup every day. And she's supposed to drink chicken broth every day, just to slowly start weaning her off the alcohol onto real food.
Right.
She doesn't realize at this point that half of the symptoms that she thinks is indicating that she needs to drink more are actually her brain screaming to be fed real food.
Right. And I do think that there's that disconnect, because somehow the brain is out there. I've often said, it's kind of like a disconnect that it just exists. It doesn't need nutrients. And I always say there's a direct correlation. What's good for our heart is good for our brain.
Absolutely. Well, my favorite motto is, it's our brain's job to allow us to cope with stress gracefully. Isn't that a lovely concept?
It is wonderful.
But to do that, it needs to be fed optimally.
Well, part of the things now, I've been going through your course, and I love it, because along the way, I realized there's things, I've always considered myself tuned in to nutrition. Didn't think of myself as by any means a novice. Was raised with that basic knowledge, and so it was something that was really palatable for me. I know for some people it's a difficult thing for them to do it.
Sure.
For myself, it was very difficult for me to walk in to a treatment facility and abuse 2 substances and walk out with 4 prescriptions, and to think that that's what I needed for the rest of my life. And I'm here to say, I often say, and in full disclosure, we're not advocating for anyone to just stop medication. No. What we are saying, though, is that there's this form of psychiatry, which is integrative, that is a responsible way of treating your symptoms, and a responsible that you may or may not need medication. You may find yourself, like myself, being in recovery. I'm always seeking for things that will keep me there.
Yes.
So when I started recognizing the work of Julia Ross's and read it, all of a sudden I was like, this is just, and it's a best-selling book. So it's not as if the knowledge hasn't been out there, but I don't know it's mainstream. Everyone mainstream will say, undoubtedly, this is a brain disease.
Right. They say it's a brain disease. It's a biopsychosocial spiritual disorder. But other than medication, mainstream psychiatry and mainstream addiction treatment does not know how to support the health of the brain, and therefore does not know how to use food and nutrients to reduce depression, reduce anxiety, reduce cravings, etc. And it's so tragic because this information, Debbie, has been around since the 50s. 1950s. Right. Orthomolecular psychiatry got started by Abram Hoffer and Carl Pfeiffer in the 50s and 60s. And there have been lots of people writing about it, but I think it threatens the American Medical Association. And we're not used to thinking that food is necessary for our functioning. Somehow in this country where we're surrounded by food, we think it's optional. We maybe live to eat. We don't eat to live. And we need to start eating to live. We need to start eating to support our brain so it can support us optimally. And that's what my whole practice as a mental health nutritionist is about, and the Academy for Addiction and Mental Health Nutrition, teaching people. This is also what the Alliance for Addiction Solutions is. So Julia Ross, Dr. Charles Gant, Dr. Hyla Cass, a number of other people got together about 10 years ago because we all felt lonely, like we were the only ones doing this. And it's so powerful, and it changes people's lives so powerfully that we wanted to get together and form a alliance to teach the public about these amazing tools. And so that's what the Alliance for Addiction Solutions is about. So I want to encourage all of your listeners to go to the website, transformingaddiction.com, read the articles, see what's there, see if there are practitioners in your area, or go on my website as well. And
that's why, after being a part of it, I think I told this story one time, but when I went into doing my energy healing, I had a really wonderful story that happened and how I really got introduced to this. It wasn't that I wasn't aware of brain health and all of this. My daughter had suffered from things, and I had sought out things on the internet, and but never directly correlated it to addiction in myself. As a parent, you're always like you're trying to help someone else.
Right.
Went through and was doing a training session with Carolyn Cooper, who I trained under for energy healing. And a woman sat next to me and said, a very gifted individual, and said, I think you're the reason that I'm here. When I said from the start, I knew I wanted to bring my energy healing back to this recovery world, she said, you need to be in touch with Julia Ross and the work of the Mood Cure. Mm-hmm. This is a piece that's missing. So when I went back home, I got the book and started to read it and started to just feel so passionate about it. So being involved in this feels as if it was truly meant to be destiny, because I feel it's something tangible that I'm able to hand to people. My energy work is one thing, but I'm actually able to hand people tools to say, this will directly influence your mental health. Now, when we influence our mental health, we influence our relationships, we influence our entire life. And it's like handing someone knowledge that there's no turning back once you know it. So one of the things this last week was one of the testings that we were talking about was blood sugar. And one of the wonderful seminars that you gave and talks was all on blood sugar and how greatly it is not discussed, or knowledge of it and how it affects addiction in particular and mental health, because that's directly correlated. And you proceeded to say, you know, everyone needs to have a really good understanding of why blood sugar and your diet directly results into relapse prevention and people staying in recovery, which that's my mission. I want that more than anything. So now I get to hear you. You put me on the spot. So immediately you said, Debbie, I want you to say it. So then I was like, I kind of brambled through saying what I understood and what I believe blood sugar is. I want to hear it from the expert so that people understand why this is so vital.
Okay. So we all know that glucose is what our body produces energy from. It can produce energy from other things as well, but the brain is actually the greatest user of blood glucose. So we eat food, it turns into various things in the bloodstream, but it includes glucose, which is sugar in the blood, and it goes everywhere, and it goes to the brain. Now, what's supposed to happen is we wake up in the morning with a baseline blood sugar level after having not eaten all night, and not supposed to be too low, not supposed to be too high. We eat something healthy, and possibly the blood sugar will raise a little bit as we digest the food. It shouldn't rise very much. And then the brain says, okay, blood sugar, there's sugar in the blood. Pancreas, do your thing. And the pancreas secretes insulin, which attaches to the sugar molecule, goes to the nearest muscle cell, knocks on the door, and says, hi, I'm insulin. You should know me. I have some sugar for you. Do you want it? And the cell takes the sugar and stores it or utilizes it, and insulin goes away. So over a 3 to 4 hour period, blood sugar gently rises and gently falls. So it's this gentle wave throughout the day. That's normal. That's healthy. What happens if we have hypoglycemia, and when we've tested, we found that 80 to 100% of all recovering alcoholics have medical hypoglycemia. And I just looked at records from a treatment program that does a 4-hour glucose tolerance test, and 100% of all the non-alcoholic addicts also met the medical criteria for hypoglycemia, which means that when you eat, your blood sugar goes way too high. But this is also true for many of the rest of us. If we eat really a high carbohydrate or sugar diet, our blood sugar is going to go way too high also. The brain then says, oh, blood sugar way too high, this could be dangerous, and it could be. Let's do something. And so the pancreas secretes too much insulin. Blood sugar is now dropping too fast. Brain doesn't like that either. Brain says, oh no, blood sugar dropping way too fast. That could be dangerous, and it could be, it could kill us. Do something. And so the adrenals now enter the picture. They weren't in the picture before with this nice gentle wave. But with this sharp spike and then sudden drop in blood sugar levels, the adrenals enter the picture and secrete adrenaline. Adrenaline tells the cells to release the sugar back into the bloodstream. It's more complicated than this, but this is the simple picture. And so what happens is this precipitous drop in blood sugar levels slow down. But adrenaline does other things. It puts us into the sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight-flight nervous system, okay? So now we're looking for a fight. We're looking for danger. We're activated. The prefrontal cortex begins to shut down, go offline. The reactive, primitive, reptilian brain activates itself. Well, that's where the addict lives, to put it in simple language. And so what happens is we're now activated. We're now reactive. We're now emotionally upset. This is where panic attacks can come in. People who are susceptible to anxiety when their blood sugar drops and adrenaline kicks in, people can have panic attacks. I had one client who had had daily panic attacks for 10 years. She'd been to 4 psychiatrists. She'd been to 3 psychotherapists. None of them were able to help her with the panic attacks. I asked her what time of day they were. They were upon a rising and late afternoon. I said, this is low blood sugar. Do this, this, and this, and come back next week. She calls me 5 days later and says, thank you so much. I have not had one panic attack for the first time in 10 years when I stabilized my blood sugar. 7 highly trained people before me missed it, and it was as simple as that.
That's, I think, really sad because, and oftentimes when people are abusing, I know with myself, I woke up first thing in the morning and I drank my coffee and you head out the day and I worked all day. I owned a store. So all of a sudden I'd be starved by 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Maybe I'd done something small to eat. Maybe I hadn't. So 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And so that's when your resolve, like for me in the morning, it was always, I'm not going to drink again. I'm not drinking. I'm not going to drink. Then all of a sudden, by 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, inevitably, I had a wonderful excuse as to why I needed to drink at that point, because there was obviously something catastrophic. Now, there's obviously a lot of different things that are going into that. Now, never did I connect, though, that I was putting myself in that mentality. Mm-hmm. And nor do I think people that are in recovery who are really working programs or trying to get help, are they beginning to realize that they're putting themselves, by continuing that behavior of eating,
exactly,
in a horrible, vulnerable state.
Right. We have found, Debbie, that missing a meal is the #1 relapse trigger for all addiction. Every single addiction. Pornography, sex, gambling, alcohol, cocaine, it doesn't matter what the addiction is. Because of what happens in the prefrontal cortex, the thinking part of our brain, when blood sugar levels drop. So adrenaline kicks in, we become emotionally dysregulated, but we can't think. We don't have access to our recovery skills. So a stressor is going to hit where if our brain is well fed, we can say, oh, I know what to do. I'm going to call my sponsor. I'm going to take a bath. I'm going to go for a walk. I'll be fine.
Right.
Instead, this is offline. We don't even remember that we have recovery skills. And the addict says, oh, I know what to do. I know what to do. Choose me.
Right.
And the person doesn't even have choice in the moment because all these other options aren't available. And so this is where people, they have no idea. I had a client, chronically relapsing alcoholic, lovely woman, beautiful woman. She had gone to a Wayne Dyer lecture at 7 o'clock at night. And it was so inspiring for her. And in the middle of the lecture, she just recommitted to sobriety and she knew she would never drink again. She left the lecture at 9 o'clock that evening, went out and got drunk. And she couldn't understand how she would be so inspired by this lecture and leave and immediately get drunk. Well, we put it together, and it turned out that she'd had lunch at noon, but had had a really busy afternoon, had missed dinner, rushed to the lecture because they were going to be late, so they didn't eat. So she didn't have an afternoon snack. She didn't have dinner. She gets out of there at 9 o'clock. So it's now been 9 hours since she'd eaten. She was hungry. Her blood sugar was low. Her brain was saying, feed me, feed me, feed me. And you're used to feeding me alcohol, so go feed me alcohol. And she got drunk.
Yeah, I used to drive down to the corner store, go down to AJ's, and my intention was that now I'm hungry, I'm going to get something to eat, and then I'd walk through the wine department.
Exactly.
And then I would rationalize, well, now I'm really stressed, and if I just had that, I'd be better.
Right.
So, and then the funny thing is, the next morning, the cycle would start all over again when I'd have no recollection, and I'd have food wrappers of food I would never eat in a million years.
Right.
You know? I mean, there's a Hostess snowball wrapper on the floor, and I couldn't even recall buying it.
Mm-hmm.
But my brain immediately went to feed me, but then I don't know. And like I said, after hearing your talk on it and education on it, it made such sense that even nowadays, even now that you know, like I know I need to eat regularly, and you know, everyone hears this. This isn't new news.
No.
But
nobody attaches it to mental health.
They don't.
Well-being. Exactly. Mm-hmm. This is that food-mood connection.
Right.
But I have another, lovely story. I had this sex addict. His drug of choice was strip clubs. And he'd been with me about 3 months, and we had him on the amino acids. We had him eating the protein every 4 hours, which is what I recommend. And he was doing beautifully. Then he came in on a Monday morning, all just despondent. You could see the shame pouring off him in waves. And I said, what happened? And he said, I went to my club Saturday afternoon right out of the blue. I don't know how it happened. I said, well, let's see what happened earlier that day. Saturday, his day off, but he got woken up by his boss at 7:30 in the morning, said, there's an emergency at work. Can you come right away? So he threw clothes on, didn't have breakfast, ran to work. Around 11 o'clock that morning, the thoughts of his club started wandering through his brain. Now, I'm convinced, Debbie, that if he'd eaten then or taken the amino acid L-glutamine, then he would have been fine. But it didn't occur to him because he was all into his work. He skips lunch. He works until 2 o'clock. And by this time, the thoughts hadn't just come and gone. The thoughts had come and stayed, and he was dancing with them. And it turned into a full-blown craving where he lost choice. So he leaves work, goes straight to his club, does his thing, leaves, realizes he's hungry, gets McDonald's, and goes home. So I looked at him and I said, well, what would have happened if you'd gone to McDonald's first? He looked startled. He said, oh, I just would have gone straight home. And so he had actually missed 2 meals. So whenever any of my recovering clients report a strong craving or a slip or relapse, the very first question I ask them isn't for the trigger or the stress. It's, when was the last time you ate protein prior to your slip or prior to your craving?
What a wonderful tool, just because everyone always talks about triggers and what was your trigger, where was it? And this is a biochemical, real deal thing that's a connection that nobody makes a correlation with. Because what you're saying is exactly what I did. I drove and I immediately got wine. Mm-hmm. Then I ate.
Right. Yes.
Because my mind already went to there. I'd gone all day long without eating.
Exactly.
put a sign on my door, said I'll be back in 15 minutes. But, you know, I'll just have my happy hour, my one drink.
Your one drink, right.
And then it was my bottle. And then I would eat. But I didn't address eating ever first because my brain immediately went there. So what you're saying is a huge tool of education that people don't get in traditional settings. We are featuring on brain health. And I always tell everyone, nobody pays to be a part of Addiction Recovery Revolution. And I did this on purpose, not because I can't use money or don't want money. It's because I don't want to taint the work of this platform.
Right.
In that, what I mean is that if someone is featured on here, it's because I feel as if it's viable. And if it's a treatment facility, they're a good treatment facility. And it gives some people, again, that's my opinion. You can treat, you know, whatever you want. Now, I look at it now in a whole different context and say, if I was referring someone for addiction treatment, absolutely they would have to have this implemented in their treatment facility. They would have to endorse the use of integrative psychiatry as a responsible means to deal with addiction. Because I do not think for one moment, I mean, one of the kids that I absolutely adore. I adored him in California. We were very good friends, and he suffered horrible, horrible anxiety. And all he kept talking about was his meds and what he needed to do in order to survive. I don't know for one. I know without a shadow of a doubt he never addressed it on a very fundamental basis nutritionally. Like, what did his brain need in order to run optimally to help him?
Right.
He never was given tools as to what nutrients would help level out and help his body. Because what nobody realizes with amino acid therapy or with nutritional therapy, we're not telling people this is medication. We're telling people we're giving your body the nutrients it needs so it can produce what it needs.
Exactly. And what I have found, Debbie, is that 80% of the time, using food and amino acid and other nutrient therapy, 80% of the time, this mostly eliminates anxiety, depression, insomnia, cravings, violence,
Right.
etc. And then 20% of the time, it doesn't work. And that's because there's an underlying medical or physiological process going on that we need to address.
Right.
So when you're talking about integrative psychiatry, what we are really thinking about here, and I'm not a medical doctor, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm a nutritionist and a psychotherapist specializing in addiction, but what we are looking at is sort of 3 levels. The first level is food. We want people to be eating what we call the pro-recovery diet, getting the proper nutrients, enough protein, keeping blood sugar balanced by eating every 3 to 4 hours, getting the good fats in, all of that. Then we're looking at purified food, amino acids, fish oil, flaxseed oil, other nutrients that the person may be really depleted and need more, or they may have a genetic need for more.
Right.
So we're bringing that in on a supplement level, purified food. And then the third piece of this is looking under the hood, right?
Right.
You don't give your car Prozac when it stops working. You take it to the mechanic who actually looks at the engine and finds out what's gone wrong with it.
Right.
And that's what we need to do with our brains. We need to, rather than just going on medication first, we want to feed the brain first and then see what's going on. It could be a thyroid issue. It could be food allergies or intolerances. It could be some genetic issues. There's a disorder called pyroluria, which nobody's heard of, but it's real. You can test for it. And it causes lifetime anxiety and other mental health issues that drive addiction. all you need to do to treat it is put the person on enough nutrients, and all these symptoms slowly fade away. So this is what we do in our work as a community, is we feed the brain and then we look under the hood for what else may be going on to drive addictive and mental health disorders.
I think what's absolutely wonderful about, first of all, you're one of the most beautiful people that I've met, and truly brilliant. Brilliant in the sense that there's a wonderful feeling that if anyone who would go to you, it's kind of a trial and error. That's what we do with our brain. If it was that simple, obviously, even when we go to a doctor, that's not that simple. Our brains are very complex. Yes, what's wonderful is that when you see someone who's trained like yourself, you don't give up. You keep on trying to figure out what the issue is. Right. And there are individuals like yourself, and there are facilities like yourself who get under the hood, who figure out the foundation of it in more than one way. Like you said, there's all of these factors. What I keep saying is this is a huge contributing factor that nobody addresses, and how wonderful. Now, before we go, I would like to hear from you. What are some of the things that you would recommend snack-wise that would keep people's blood sugar up? So when they get in that state and they recognize it, what would you say nutritionally they should do and supplement-wise they should do?
Okay, so food-wise, and again, we're recommending that people eat protein every 4 hours, and premenstrual women should be eating every 3 hours.
Right.
Recovering women who relapse tend to relapse premenstrually. And I'd like all your women who are listening to this to, circle that PMS time on your calendar so that you know this is a higher risk time for you and you can take steps to protect yourself. So food, a hard-boiled egg with some baby carrots, hummus and celery. If you're okay with milk, and not everybody is, some mozzarella cheese sticks with an apple. You notice how I'm pairing a protein with a complex carb with some fat in there.
Right.
It could be some beef jerky. Beef jerky by itself is good. I would still like to add a complex carb to that. And that could be some fruit. It could be some vegetables. It could be some whole grain, crackers. There's some healthier ones out there. So, and you can make beef jerky yourself that's absolutely delicious and doesn't have garbage in it.
Right.
So that's the idea.
Right.
We're looking at a bare minimum of 15 grams of protein. Most people need more, but sometimes people look at me and say, oh my God, that's too much. So minimum 15 grams of protein every 4 hours, starting within an hour of getting up in the morning.
And I've noticed with myself, we've featured people that specialize in the food. And when you start Googling people, and obviously she coaches and teaches people a whole aspect of this, it's a whole different level. Patty Reese has amazing knowledge that's amazing all in itself, and she's the president of the Alliance for Addiction Solutions. And so it's amazing when you start empowering people with it, it can be really that simple to help you.
It can be really that simple. And if you don't have access to food in that moment, I recommend that all my clients carry around with them the amino acid L-glutamine. Mm-hmm. Because 1,000 milligrams of glutamine, either opened and popped under the tongue or just swallowed with water. You cannot take it with food because it does something different if you take it with food. But if you take it between meals, it actually feeds your prefrontal cortex and appears, there's not been enough research, but it appears to bring it back online, allows you to access your recovery skills again lowers your craving for alcohol and sugar, etc. So, in old time AA, the sponsors would say to their sponsees, carry a little baggie of hard candy with you if you get a craving. We say, carry a little baggie of glutamine with you if you get a craving.
Right.
Much
and
better.
that's just a foreign thing. I mean, we're talking, these are hardcore issues that we're dealing with right now. This opiate addiction crisis that we have, this heroin crisis that we have to start scaling up and starting to learn areas that we need to address within addiction recovery so that we can increase the rate of people recovering.
Yes.
And you're a huge factor of that, and integrative and having people learn this knowledge is a huge factor that needs to be addressed and not have it be such a disconnect. Mm-hmm. It's going to be increasingly difficult for you if you're living off of rock stars and cigarettes or vaping. Yeah. That if you don't think for one moment that that's attributing to a higher percentage of people who are going to be relapsing, you're wrong. And so if you want to scale recovery and you want to stay in recovery, I highly recommend that you start to educate yourself and seek out individuals like Christina, like myself, like Patty, like anyone that you could find on this website that are going to help you understand and, read the books that are out there that are related to it. Read the Mood Cure, which will change your life and your mentality as to what.
Also, Debbie, the book 7 Weeks to Sobriety.
Right.
Is an amazing book. It was written by Joan Matthew Larson, whose son killed himself, we think, on a low blood sugar on Christmas Day after he'd gotten out of treatment. And she was so upset by this that she went and got her doctorate in human nutrition and started a treatment program in Minneapolis like 30 years ago, applying all these principles to addiction recovery. And her book, 7 Weeks to Sobriety, and her following book, Depression Free Naturally, are wonderful guides.
Right. And I think if people just start on this avenue, I mean, this is a little summit. We're going to be having another really large one. The Alliance is going to be putting on that's going to also, showcase even more people and the work that they've done. And it just, like you said, I love your analogy that it's just one of many things. We get under the hood first, and then we continue on. That it's not just a single-minded approach. And that's where I think we really, honestly, in addiction, have created the grave statistics is if you take recovery as a single-minded approach and feel as if you're done, never stop learning, never stop growing, and never stop being susceptible to learning. And this is biochemistry. This is real. This is something tangible. You don't have to, this is real.
That's right. And you can do it yourself.
Right.
And I definitely believe in empowering my clients to do it themselves.
Right.
So to that end, my level 1 training, which is amino acid therapy and food, the online course is starting in September. But we also have a very exciting live intensive weekend coming up in Salt Lake City, the first weekend in November.
Yep.
And we're going to be teaching in this 3 days all of the content. Huh?
I said I'm going to be there.
Yes, that's going to be wonderful. So we're going to be teaching all the content of the level 1 training in this 3 days. You won't get the coaching that you get on the online course, but you get the information. And I really want to encourage all of your listeners to come join us in Salt Lake City and meet this community and get energized and get hope. We need hope, Debbie. Yeah. And this approach, the third leg of the stool, gives us hope.
Right. Well, Christina, thank you again for taking the time to be a part of Addiction Recovery Revolution. And the links for Christina's work and how to be involved with all of the things that we spoke about will be linked with this video. But you're more than welcome to go ahead and just say it for those that want to be able to write it down. It will be linked, however, with your video.
Okay.
But I do like to always give people the opportunity if there's phone numbers and ways that they can directly be in contact with you.
So my phone number is 303-888-9617. 303-888-9617. My email address is just my name, Christina Velsalek @gmail.com. And then the URL for the Academy is addictionnutritionacademy.com.
Wonderful. Thank you, Christina. You're a wonderful, beautiful, brilliant person that I've learned so much from and I look forward to continuing my journey of education because I feel so passionate about this mission statement. So
you're so welcome, Debbie. Thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.